most of us have felt this split, listeners. Spiritual on maybe Sunday, but then hustling like hell on Monday. Praying for peace while secretly terrified we'll be broke if we slow down. Now, listeners, today's guest has lived inside that exact contradiction for years until he finally solved it in a way most people would call it impossible. He lost his mother in 2011. Spirituality saved him. Then success started calling, and the two felt like enemies. He wrote an entire book, Siddhartha Sets a Goal, just to answer one question for himself. Can you be truly awake and still want to build something big in the world? So, listeners, please welcome my incredible guest, Philip Saparov. Philip, welcome to the show, and as always, it's really an honor to have you here.
Thank you, Sana. Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for this wonderful introduction.
Beautiful. Philip, to begin with, we definitely explored your journey. You left New York City with just 5 weeks of money. You rebuilt your life from scratch. But then I think this is something which is it's kind of very different from the conventional discussions or conversations that we have, because I believe there is a lot of misconception around spirituality. Most people discover it because something breaks them down. You lost your mother in 2011. So what was the very first spiritual idea or practice that actually gave you relief? And why do you think so many grieving people reach for spirituality instead of, say, therapy or ambition?
Sure. Back in 2011, when my mother died, it was a very difficult, devastating time. It was the first time in my life that I lost such a close person in my life. My mom, we had a wonderful relationship, and she just died of consequences of being a lifetime smoker, unfortunately. And what really helped me to answer your question, what helped me at that time, because I was grieving and it was a very difficult time, but a friend of mine shared a talk on audio, like a little CD, with the Eckhart Tolle's talk about spirituality and how to find peace among chaos, or something like that, something to that effect. And I began listening to this CD, and I found it extremely helpful. And I was actually shocked at the ideas that were presented and the manner of the speaker, and it was just so interesting how Eckhart presented his idea of living in the now, in the present moment. It is of course more than just an idea. It is more of a practice, and as it turned out, this is what spiritual enlightenment is really all about. It is about living in the present moment. Now, something interesting that he shares in his talk is that he was speaking. He spoke once to a Zen monk. Now, that was in the beginning of his journey. He spoke with a Zen monk, and he shared with them that he kind of noticed that he's thinking less. He's thinking fewer thoughts. What was the deal with that? And the Zen monk said, well, that's what Satori is all about. That's what enlightenment is all about. That you don't think that much, and whatever thoughts you do think, you don't really identify. You don't identify with them, and you do not attach yourself to those thoughts. In other words, you are not your thoughts, and you do not allow thoughts to dictate how you feel and to change basically, you don't let your thoughts make your candle flicker, like your inner candle flicker. Let's put it that way, or to be blown out. That was a revolutionary idea for me. I didn't know that it was our thoughts that lead us astray from the present moment. And it is all about living in the present moment. And the more we are in the present moment, of course, the more we are at peace. The problem was that at the same time, I didn't like my living situation at all. I didn't like the job I had. I didn't like my living situation. But I didn't like, I was, let's say, utterly dissatisfied with my entire living situation at the time. I was facing basically another crisis of sorts. And while I was receiving this increasing peace as a result of the spiritual practice that I began practicing, I simply began observing my thoughts and observing my mind, developing my kind of cultivating my witness and living in the now. That was what I was practicing. But then I realized that in order for me to change my life and live the life I really want to live, that I know is kind of in store for me if I go for it, in order to do that, I must think thoughts. And not only that, but to think them intensely and to emotionalize them, which is basically the opposite of being spiritual in the moment and disidentifying from your thoughts. Napoleon Hill calls this a magnificent obsession. Now, of course, we know that Napoleon Hill is the author of the book Think and Grow Rich, and that's exactly what he thinks. Even the title of the book suggests that it is all about thinking. Think and grow rich. And the truth is that he's absolutely right in that book. And like other books, such as The Secret and many other books that talk about manifesting, even my own book, I have a book about manifesting as well, called Manifesting Secrets. But manifesting reality is all about transmuting our thoughts into outward circumstances. And that became a conundrum for me because I wanted to make progress on the spiritual path, but at the same time, I also definitely wanted to change my life. There was no question about it. So that seemed like a big contradiction for me at the moment. And I kind of decided, I set on the journey to figure out that conundrum for myself. So what I began doing, I began thinking about it more, kind of contemplating it and still meditating a lot, which means that, in meditation, I wasn't thinking, I was just, developing my presence. And I kept developing my presence while at the same time devoting some time to thinking, contemplating, and making certain plans for myself. And I just kept going with that, and I would take a lot of notes. Put them in my Evernote app. And at some point, I eventually, somewhere along my journey, I came up with a practice that I eventually called the aim wheel, where A stands for awareness, I stands for insight, and M stands for manifesting. And I came up with that practice. I shouldn't even say that I came up with it. It kind of came through me. It was kind of revealed to me because I kept asking that question. And out of my subconscious or through my subconscious mind, from infinite intelligence, this practice came through. It came through that I was practicing that one, and I can talk about it in more detail in a second. And at one point, I realized that I should write a book on it because that conundrum was pretty much solved for me. So I wrote that book. I wrote the book called Siddhartha Sets a Goal,
Mm-hmm.
in which the premise is it's pretty simple. Initially, because we know from the Buddhist lore, from the story of Siddhartha, who later became the Buddha,
Mm-hmm.
he left his palace, and he was a son, he was a prince, he was a son of a king. So he had everything. He had everything going for him. He had a pretty easy life and a life of luxury. But, well, without going into the whole story of the Buddha, in order to become the Buddha, he had to make a decision and set a goal for himself. He wanted to achieve enlightenment. Now that was a goal for him, and he set that as a goal. Essentially, that's what he did because that's what he wanted. He desired enlightenment, and he was intentional about it. He kind of sneaked out of the palace. He cut off his hair. He changed his robe into just a monk's robe, and he became a mendicant monk. He would just live on one bowl of rice a day and just practicing austerities and all that stuff. So without going into that story, which is a very beautiful story, eventually he achieved enlightenment, and of course, on his path to enlightenment, he had to realize that all goals need to be dropped. So that was no longer a goal, and so the enlightenment was a goal until it had to be dropped, and then enlightenment happened. So it was a magnificent journey for Siddhartha, but it's just very interesting. Something very, very interesting that I noticed about the life story and the journey of Siddhartha on his journey to becoming the Buddha was the role of the mind. Siddhartha was a very intelligent young man. He was a very intelligent man of almost unparalleled intelligence, very intelligent. And he used his mind to take him about probably something like 80, maybe to something like 80 to 90% of the way towards enlightenment was achieved by thinking, not by just meditating. This is something that spiritual teachers don't talk about. It's just very interesting that you don't hear much about it, that you would come under an impression that he achieved enlightenment through meditation and austerity. But the truth is that was only part of the journey. That was only maybe 20%. The other 80%, and how did I learn about it? I learned about it from the book, I believe it's The Life of the Buddha, I believe, by Bhikkhu Nanamoli. So it is a book that is considered very close to the Buddhist lore, to the Pali text, and it is a veritable book, and it's just so interesting how it describes how Siddhartha thought himself out of many limiting beliefs and limiting thoughts, and thereby destroying those mental constructs just by thinking. For example, his biggest initial conundrum, the biggest worry, the biggest pain that was kind of motivating his journey was the encounter with the three uncomfortable kind of sights, right? He saw a sick man, then he saw an aging man, and then he saw a dead man. Three things that he had never seen before, being a very young, very healthy, man in a princely palace where his father protected him from everything, basically from everything on the outside. And that bothered him because he knew that sooner or later, sickness, old age, and death are inevitable for him. even for a prince like himself. And that caused him a lot of trouble. And that motivated him to go out and pursue enlightenment so that he would be free of these worries. And the way he overcame these worries was not by meditation. Those worries did not go away at the time of his enlightenment. That did not happen. What happened was he actually sat down to think about them. And he logically, I cannot recall exactly the verbiage that is used in the book, but he sat down and he logically came to the conclusion that pretty much something along the lines of, since everybody is given to these to these calamities, basically 3 calamities: the sickness, old age, and death. And he's just one of the human beings who are all subject to that. Worrying about it makes no sense whatsoever, since it is absolutely inevitable. There was no sense worrying about it, and he made an argument like that for himself. And in the book it is described how he talked about it logically about sickness, then he applied the same logic to old age, and then the same logic to death. And he says the fears of sickness, getting old, and dying left me. So they left him not as a result of meditation. They left him as a result of contemplation, actually very clear and logical thinking, and very courageous thinking. So that was a very interesting revelation for me. Something else that I found is that human beings can be situated along a certain spectrum. There's a certain spectrum. And what is a spectrum? It's just a line that connects two extremes. Now, on one extreme, we have doing, or extreme doing, someone who just engages in activity all the time. Someone very, very active, very goal-oriented, very mind-oriented, and very much into doing and being very, very active. Someone like Tony Robbins, for example, or Elon Musk. Someone who's extremely active and just doing things in this world. Just constantly manifesting outcomes, creating new things, products, businesses, and so on and so on and so on. Now, on the other end of that spectrum, we have someone that Eckhart Tolle calls a frequency holder. What is that? It's a person who lacks all ambition whatsoever. And you and I, we all know people like that. We all know someone who just lacks ambition whatsoever. There's no ambition, and sometimes people like that become they come under criticism. Oh, why don't you go out there and do something? You're just like sitting here and so on and so on. And the truth is that there are people like that, and it is part of their neurology. It is part of their neuropotential. They come from the factory just being very, very agreeable with the outside world, and they do not seek to change it. And they would rather surrender to it. And they are like that by nature. Sometimes, quite often, a problem comes that people don't understand that they come from the factory predisposed towards one or the other end of the spectrum. So some are more of doers. Others are more frequency holders. Like they just like to simply be. So in fact, these people are naturally a little bit more enlightened. In fact, they're enlightened in a spiritual sense, because they're just more at peace than everyone else. And while everyone else is hustling, they're kind of relaxed and they're fine. So Eckhart Tolle was actually like that. I mean, he still is like that. He came from a factory, being a very, very kind of very, very low key, very kind of passive person. And we all know people like that. Perhaps Ramana Maharshi.
Mm-hmm.
he was like that because he became enlightened at age what, like 15 or something. He was very, very young, and he didn't have any ambition whatsoever. All he wanted to do was to just be, and that was him. Now, we can talk about it in terms of um, previous lives, or in terms of reincarnation in previous lives. So maybe Ramana Maharshi was someone who, for thousands of lives, maybe he was more active, and finally he came to this world in this incarnation. He came to this world just already pre-enlightened, so to speak. He was almost enlightened already. He started having difficulties around other people and everything. Then he went to a temple to join a temple, and then he just stayed there. And the people who were at the temple, they recognized, the kind of specialness of this boy. But he became enlightened there, and all he did was just walking towards his favorite mountain, hanging out among animals. They loved him, and he loved them. And then he delivered talks with people. But it's just very, very important to understand that this spectrum exists, and everybody listening today on this podcast is somewhere along the spectrum from the factory, as a factory setting. And if a person who is towards that side of the spectrum, where you're more of you're more into being rather than doing, sometimes society and other people, institutions, they will push you to become more ambitious, and that's where unhappiness begins. And the more ambitious you become because someone else told you to be so, the more unhappy this person will probably be. Because now this person pursues things that they think they should be pursuing, but they're not necessarily in alignment with that person's neurology and so on. And on the other hand, on the other end of the spectrum, again, people like Tony Robbins, Elon Musk, and basically all the entrepreneurs who absolutely love their businesses, they're completely invested in them, and they live and breathe their businesses. These are people like that. To that, it is necessary to say that there are two kinds of enlightenment. One is spiritual, the one that we'll talk about, and that is what the Buddha eventually achieved. But the other is rarely talked about, and it is creative enlightenment. It is waking up to your neuro potential. It is waking up to how you actually came from the factory, knowing exactly who you are. And if you happen to be predisposed to be creative in this world, to be very agentic, to create things and to do and to go out and achieve, if this is your predisposition, you really should know that. You really should know that. And on your pursuit of spiritual enlightenment, then, because, going towards the other end of the spectrum, you should recognize that it is a door that is always open to you. The now. The door of now is a door that is always open to you. But the answer for you is not to leave the world of doing behind and just become another frequency holder and just do nothing, because that's not going to work for you very well, because your entire neurology is yearning for creativity and agency. So that is something very important.
Then, wow,
Yeah.
it is such a explanation. And Philip, also one question that comes to my mind is, like, were there years when you, where you judged yourself or, let other people, spiritual people judge you for wanting more spiritual, like material success? Like, if yes, then what did that judgment actually cost you in real life?
Well, it's a very good question. To me, this is very personal, because in my life, I always sought a kind of work and kind of activity that I would actually enjoy and consider right for myself rather than wrong. Something that I would really, something that would really be my thing.
Mm.
And I spent much of my life, starting in college, back in college days, up to virtually recently, up to the time that I became a published author, just looking for a way to be productive and useful to people in this world by being myself rather than by being someone else. And I tried so many things that were not my things at all. I tried to be someone else many, many times in my life. So full disclosure, I was never, it was not a smooth sailing for me at all. I tried so many things, and I tried real estate, and I started a marketing company for local businesses, brick and mortar businesses. And I invested a lot of money into learning all these things. And you know what? I'm super, super grateful for everything I've learned as a result, because it is, in order to succeed in any endeavor, to really set a goal and succeed at it, you really know how to go about doing that. So if you want a successful business, if you want a profitable business, you really should study entrepreneurship. It is important to understand how business works, what are some of the most important things in business, and so on and so on. For a long time, I didn't believe that I could own my own business, because that seemed kind of out of reach a little bit. That seemed too much to me, until I realized that, or I should rather say, until I came upon, or it was revealed to me, the concept of awakened entrepreneurship. You see, if you look at the phrase awakened entrepreneurship, which is the name of my company, the first part, awakened, has to do with spiritual awakening, because that's the awakening part. The second part, the second part of entrepreneurship, is highly creative. See, it's highly creative. So I am putting together these two seemingly opposite, seemingly disparate concepts together. They should almost cancel each other out, right? Being awakened and being an entrepreneur. But in reality, there is a way, and most really, really successful entrepreneurs who are really fulfilled, those fulfilled ones, they become awakened entrepreneurs, what I would call awakened entrepreneurs. Let me give you an example. For example, even the Buddha himself. Now, I would not call him an entrepreneur, obviously, because he was not a business owner. However, he was very active in the world. He was very active in the world. He was so active in the world that, an entire religion of Buddhism came out of his talks, because after his enlightenment, he continued to walk, just basically to walk and wander around the country, going from one place to another, delivering talks. And that's how he became famous, because he was speaking from such depth and such height of understanding that, people were talking about, oh, have you heard about this guy? You want to see? Oh, we have a real man of wisdom, real sage in our town today. You really gotta see him. You really gotta check out what he's saying, because he's saying some amazing things. And people would, and then he had a following of people. He gathered a following of people. People would follow him, and they became his disciples. And that's how basically the religion of Buddhism, this following was born. So it was born out of a lot of activity. So you see, prior to his enlightenment, he spent a lot of time in solitude and silence. That was most of the time spent was there, just solitude and silence. But once the enlightenment was achieved, the Buddha engaged in a lot of creative activity. So I call that kind of awakened entrepreneurship, because again, entrepreneurship, it doesn't mean necessarily that you are starting a business. It comes from a French, the word entrepreneurship comes from the French word that means to undertake. Basically, to take something up, to do something that you didn't do before, to make something happen. And that's what he did exactly. He made it happen. He brought people into his circle, and he, just by being himself, he was 100% himself. Zero, what do you call it? The imposter syndrome, right? So zero imposter syndrome. Why? Because he was fulfilled. He was completely fulfilled. Zero ambition, zero thoughts, just talking about something that he knew absolutely. And he knew that it was, he was speaking the real, absolute truth. And this is what, that's what made his, that's what made it easy for him to amass such a following, because all he had to do was speak from the heart, and that was it. Now, so that is the, that's an example of how total silence and totally being identified with the present moment can give rise to a lot of activity that changes the world. Osho is another example. It's a great example. We have thousands of hours recorded of Osho's talks. Now he's a kind of a self-proclaimed enlightened man. To me, he is enlightened indeed. Just because of the way when he talks, I know this man is on a different plane. He's on a different plane. It's like I'm at the foot of the hill, and he's on top of the hill. And when I ask him questions, he's sitting there, and all he has to do is look around and say, "Oh, okay, that's how it is up here," and that's it. So, oh, sure, how is it up there? Oh, this is how it is up here. All he has to do is look around and describe what he sees. So he's definitely a man on a different plane of existence. But just notice how this enlightened man who spends basically all of his life virtually in meditation, used to spend all of his life in meditation and silence. It's just in his garden over there in solitude and silence. And he came out to speak with his disciples, with his sannyasins. And we have recordings of thousands of hours of his talks. And now these talks are they're sold on Amazon. We have books, Osho's books on Amazon and everything. So that total silence and total kind of total silence and solitude, that spiritual enlightenment gave rise to incredible creativity, because the volumes, the amount that he has produced is probably greater than most writers who have ever lived. You see? So, this is how I came up. This is how I finally realized that the East and the West, the creation and the surrender, they have to be integrated. We as humanity need to integrate spirituality and creativity so that we would be more at peace, but at the same time, so we could make material progress in the world. And that's how I came up with my aim wheel practice. Aim wheel, which is like a Taoist, it's like a triple yin-yang symbol, if you know that Taoist symbol, where there are two kind of teardrop-shaped kind of segments of a circle, but this one is a triple one. So there are three segments, and the first one stands for awareness. So you cultivate your awareness, meaning you meditate, absolutely meditate, and spend some time every single day in total silence and solitude. That is the foundation. That is the foundation. This is the place where you surrender to what is the present moment, no matter what you're dealing with in your business, in your family, or wherever else it could be. It doesn't matter at this moment because you simply accept it. You simply accept and surrender. And that is your sacred space where you simply become present and you develop awareness. Okay, I'm aware of what is going on within me, around me, and you come to peace with that. Why? Because it is already happening. It's undeniable. You know, if I just cut my finger, okay, it happens to be an undeniable fact that I just cut my finger. So I better simply accept it and then go from there. Instead of just, instead of sitting here and lamenting the fact that I just cut my finger. Oh, there's no point in lamenting. It already happened. I'm accepting it. And now I move to the next phase. The next phase of the aim wheel is I. And I, the letter I, stands for insight. And now what I do is now I go back to working with my mind. See, in the first segment it was the no mind segment. It's the segment of meditation, which is disidentification with the mind. We're not using the mind, just becoming present. Now in the next segment, we begin engaging with the mind. And we begin asking proactively for insights that we need. So we ask for brilliant answers to questions that concern us. It could be anything. What should be my next step in business? What should my business be at all? What should I do here? What should I do in this relationship? And what is going on? We have questions. And if we ask, as we ask questions as part of this framework, we're going to receive brilliant answers. And sometimes they're going to be difficult answers. They're going to be truthful answers, because we're going to receive them from our subconscious and or through our subconscious mind from infinite intelligence, which contains all knowledge. That is when I speak about these things, it's not because I read it in a book somewhere, but it's because it is my personal experience. I've had personal experience with receiving insights that were not part of my conscious or subconscious mind. I just know it, and that's why I'm able to speak about it. And finally, the third segment it also belongs to the mind. So we have one segment. The first one is no mind, and then the two next segments are of the mind. So the second one was insight, and finally the third one is M, where M stands for manifesting. This is why I call it the AIM wheel, AIM wheel. The wheel turns, you enter with meditation, then you ask for insights, and finally, based on the insight that you receive, you are able to manifest the reality that you really want, a reality that is really good for you. The reality, your ideal reality. The more you practice the AIM wheel, the better answers you will get as to what goals to set, how to go about achieving them, and you will receive brilliant answers, and you will be achieving and manifesting your outcomes wonderfully, because you will be doing it in a very conscious way.
That makes sense. Oh, so Philip, I'm very sure our listeners will be so much eager to kind of get a direction, a head start with your help as well. So if they would like to do the same, and they would also like to connect with you, get a hold of your book as well, know more about Awaken Entrepreneurship as well, what would be the easiest way?
The easiest way is to go to podcastfreebie.com. Just one word, podcastfreebie.com. I prepared that little URL, so it will take you straight to the registration page for my mini course. It's a free mini course. Just put in your name and email, and you're off to the races. And in the mini course, I teach you that method. I teach you the AIM wheel method, all the fundamentals of it, and you can start practicing it immediately.
Exactly. Listeners, I'm gonna have all the links in the show notes, so that you can easily connect with Philip. And I think, um, what I realize is the problem, which we kind of think that we had to choose between meaning and money,
Yeah.
like one cancels. I think the real betrayal isn't wanting both. Maybe the betrayal is pretending we don't. So to all the listeners, if you're feeling that split inside you right now, it's absolutely fine. The part that wants to meditate at sunrise, but then the part that also wants to close a six-figure deal by lunch, you are not broken. And Philip beautifully helps us realize
You are not. You can do both. You can do
that. Exactly. And I think we are just next in line to figure this out. So, Philip, thank you so much, because I know it's not easy to, um, you know, explain this and give just an easy answer. So, thank you so much. This was really much needed.
My pleasure. My pleasure, Sana. Thank you so much for having me on your podcast.
Thank you. And listeners, I urge all of you to check out Siddhartha Sets a Goal. Link in the show notes. Refer to them along with this episode on your favorite podcast platform. And to every single one of you carrying the same quiet war inside, you don't have to choose between your soul and your ambitions. You just have to stop letting other people's unfinished arguments decide for you. Until next time, this has been Cosmic Confluence. I'm Sana. I'll see you next time. Thank you.